Great.
All right.
Hey everybody. Yeah, I'm Muthu, and I want to share with you some of the experiments I did using the Python Twitter API. So briefly, the Python Twitter API allows you to access the social graph of your connections within Twitter. And you can do different things with it. Like if you're building a web service, you can use Twitter authentication for external users on your website. And you can use the Python Twitter API for that. But I've prototyped applications where I can connect to my user account and interact with my timeline, my followers, post tweets, and things like that. So that's the overview of my presentation. So you can follow the presentation by downloading some of the code from this GitHub URL. Yeah, so about me, I used to do research earlier in optical modeling, and currently I work in the Metro West area as a transcompiler software engineer. So I work on converting MATLAB code to HDL. So that's what I do. So back to Python Twitter. So to get started with interacting with your Twitter timelines, what you would have to do is you need to get this library installed. And the URL for this is here. So you can go download this. It's also on the pip package repository and everything. So and obviously, once you have that set up, you need to, of course, you already have a Twitter account. And you have to create what is known as the OAuth protocol access tokens. So how this works is the Twitter API is built on top of the HTTP. So using this OAuth and REST, I'm not very familiar with the details of that. But the Python Twitter exposes a high-level class framework for you to interact with the Twitter platform. It'll give you methods and so on. So you need to perform two important things by manually logging in to your Twitter account to create an application and authorize it to programmatically interact with your Twitter account. So that'll give you basically base 64 encoded strings, which are called user secret and tokens and so on. And also you have to make sure you choose to provide the authentication permission for this app. So what that means is when you launch your Python Twitter application, you ask Twitter to allow that application to log in on your behalf, so you don't have to type in your username password every time. So that's the authentication part. So once that is set up, it kind of looks like it. So the flow usually looks like it, the code snippet here. So you import the Twitter API, Twitter library, and here is where you provide all those user secrets, the tokens you created, and you get a handle to your Twitter account. And you can use some of the common methods. Here's to, on this line, you can get access to your public timeline. And you can basically read the first 20 tweets and so on. And here, it's a list comprehension to print the usernames. And it also allows you to post to your timeline. I guess this gives you a sense of what is possible. Like if you can iterate on all your followers, or you can iterate on your on the people whose timeline, on the people who you follow. So you can navigate the graph of your connections through this Twitter API programmatically. So I built two apps using this Python Twitter, and one of them is called the Daily Curl app. So Tamil is my native language. I'm originally from Chennai in India. So there is a bunch of classical literature in Tamil, which I wanted to tweet periodically. So I used this Python Twitter API and set up a Twitter account at this link. And it would just grab a couple of the random, it would grab a random couplet along with its English translation and commentary and post it once every 12 hours, so twice a day. So this is set up as a cron job and it's been going on for a while. So this is an interesting experiment in learning the Python Twitter. And you can also do things like you can auto follow back your followers and you can direct message them, but don't do that, that's spamming. Yeah. So the other app you can try is called the Git post commit hook. So for one of my projects, I thought it'd be cool to post the Git commits onto Twitter. And the way you can do that is you have these scripts called Git hooks, and you can edit them at this location relative to your Git root. And you can set up commands to execute when you commit code. So what I did was I have this Python app that runs when you commit code into the Git, and that takes the latest log message and uses this Python Twitter to push it onto my Twitter timeline. So here is an example command line snippet. So I commit the code, and along with it, it goes into the Git, and then it invokes this Python script, and which pushes it to my Twitter timeline. So I guess you should be able to see it in the bottom right here. So the source for this application is also on the GitHub links. I guess finally I'll just conclude by saying there are some limitations on the Twitter API because it's the publicly accessible, freely accessible. You have rate limits on how many messages you can post per hour, and how many queries you can ask from Twitter. Because if you want to do more, then you probably want to subscribe to that paid API and paid service. So I'm not sure how that works. But there are limits on the free account. And of course, I guess you try not to spam people. So yeah, there are links to my projects and my Twitter account if you want to interact with me. I guess that's about it. Yeah, thank you.